Revenge films.
When I got married to my husband, Jonathan, I lived separately from his family house, although we lived nearby. Ever since the very beginning, when I got married to my husband, I was receiving a lot of harassment from his family. The first harassment that I was receiving was shocking. That's because it happened on my wedding day. On the day of my wedding, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law destroyed the wedding dress, shredding it and drawing all over it. They did it when people weren't around, so they thought that they might be able to get away with it, but luckily the venue had security cameras inside the dressing room, just in case anything happened. And so there was crystal clear footage of what they have done, and my husband was furious. He yelled at them, and they were banned from entering the wedding venue. As for my wedding dress, on the wedding day, unfortunately it wasn't the dress, but my husband and I chose together. But luckily, I had prepared a backup white dress just in case something like this might happen, and so thankfully we were able to have a successful, beautiful wedding without his family there to destroy it. However, the harassment didn't end there. After we got married, there was a time that my mother-in-law waited until I left the house to go grocery shopping, and she snuck into the house without anyone's knowledge and destroyed the living room. And then she waited until I got home and said this to me: "What an unbelievable dirty home! What's wrong with you? You're such a useless wife!" And she insulted me in this way. At the time, it was still my husband and myself, and we were in the second year of marriage, but no matter how hard we tried, we weren't able to have children. And of course, that was another point of my mother-in-law to pick on me. "If Jonathan was going to get married, I wish it was a decent woman. It would have been so much better for him to stay single if he was going to get stuck with a worthless wife." She had already decided that I was the reason that we weren't able to have children. Of course, every single time that this conversation happened, my husband would get furious and yell at them for me. Eventually, the two of us sat down and discussed our options, and we decided to take a leap of faith and get tested for infertility. That was when we discovered that my husband was the one that was infertile. We got the results, and my husband was pretty devastated. And then he started apologizing to me, and at one point, he even started saying that he wanted to get a divorce because he felt terrible that I wouldn't be able to have children, and that he didn't want me to suffer because of that. But I truly loved my husband, and if we weren't going to have kids, then I assured them that we'd be able to have a happy life together. And then my husband went to his family house, and the reason why we weren't able to have children was because of his infertility, and he demanded that they stop harassing me about it any further. However, my mother-in-law refused to believe him at all and claimed that I was forcing him to say that, even after I re-showed her the exam result of the paper in the hospital. She started saying nonsense that it was fake, and my husband gave up and stopped trying to speak to them. As long as he and I understood each other, it would be fine, and we were just going to leave them alone. But then, one day, my mother-in-law did something unforgivable to me. Ever since I was a little kid, I've actually had a lot of allergies. On that day, my mother-in-law invited my husband and I over for dinner, and then she purposely hid the food that I was deathly allergic to into the food and served it to me. Normally, we would never go over to Jonathan's family house because Jonathan's cousin got married. His mother said that they were going to host a dinner party for the whole family at their house, so we weren't able to say no. Before I started eating the food, I did take a good look at it to make sure that I didn't see anything dangerous, but because my mother-in-law had grinded the food, there was no way that I'd be able to tell. I took one bite and my body reacted immediately. I developed hives all over my body and I was carried to an ambulance to the hospital. "Oh, how dramatic! I can't believe that you'd call an ambulance! That's so embarrassing, just because you're over-exaggerating! Obviously, there's no way you're gonna die over just a little allergy! Because of you, this entire dinner party was destroyed, you little brat!" When she said that to me, for the first time ever, I seriously felt like killing her. However, my husband showed all of the anger, and he yelled at his mother and told her that we would be cutting off all ties with them. And then he very quickly arranged for us to move to a different town. Once we moved houses further away, the days were peaceful. Around that time, one of our families that lived there in the neighborhood actually had the same problem of infertility as us. And we found out that even though they weren't able to give birth to children of their own, they had adopted children. When we heard that, my husband and I discussed it together, and my husband agreed that we wanted to adopt children. So we asked those friends to introduce us to adoption centers, and we went to a couple of times to go visit them. We met Sarah, who's 1 year old at the time, and we became a happy family of 3. It's true that I may not be able to give birth to my daughter myself, but I felt the love from the bottom of my heart, and I knew that I would do anything and everything for this girl. Ever since my husband found out that he was infertile, he had completely given up on his dreams of becoming a father. He seemed so thrilled that we were finally able to hold a child and call the baby daughter ours. He was always buying toys for the baby on his way home from work and saying,
"Come and play with Daddy, Sarah!"
He loved her. Sarah grew up to become close to us, as if we were actually related, and is always in a great mood. I'm truly so grateful that she and my husband had this opportunity at a new life. However, one day, in the midst of our happiness, we got a call from my mother-in-law, despite how awful she had been to us all this time, at the bare minimum. Because she was my husband's biological mother, I hadn't blocked her contact. When we first moved, she was contacting me a lot, but perhaps because my husband had yelled at her once again, that had quieted down for a while. But then my mother-in-law said that she needed to speak to me urgently. My mother-in-law mother-in-law, I knew it was going to be something outrageous anyways, but because she was being annoying, I decided to listen. When she proceeded to tell me that when her sister-in-law moved back to the family home, because she had an affair and got a divorce. However, using the reason that the kids aren't getting in the way of her marriage, she left the 2 kids at the family house and ran away. My father-in-law had already passed away, and she was screaming that she wouldn't be able to look after the kids herself, and so my mother-in-law was troubled, and she was coming to us for help. Not only that, but she was trying to say that it was almost laughable. She must have heard that we adopted a child, because this is what she proceeded to say. "You need to hurry up and return that stranger's kid that you don't even have a relation to. You need to raise these kids. I have no choice, so I guess I'll live for your sake. So hurry up and give me your address." Those were her demands. I was almost amazing that she could say that. It was true that her daughter was adopted, but we were already a family, and she was her precious one and only daughter. If anything, I had already been troubled by my sister-in-law and children in the past. They refused to listen to anything that anybody said. And since my sister-in-law was always bullying me, her children also started to take after and copying their mother in bullying me. There was absolutely no way that I was going to take on these little devils. And on top of that, I couldn't believe that my mother-in-law was trying to move in with us when we originally moved out of the previous home because we were trying to get rid of her. Who would live with somebody who would put allergens purposely into the food that they were definitely allergic to? That's why, of course, my answer was straight away up no. But then my mother-in-law said that I was useless to talk to, and she insisted to talking to Jonathan. I did as she wished and handed over the phone to my husband after I explained the situation, and he was even more livid than myself. First of all, the reason why my sister-in-law ended up in a divorce was because my mother had quietly acknowledged the divorce and didn't do anything to stop her. Apparently, the guy that she was having an affair with was better looking than my sister-in-law's ex-husband, and so insisted on paying for the love hotel. She was allowing them to use the family home as a hotel and teaming up with the sister-in-law to help her kids with the other man and trick her ex-husband. It's no wonder that he divorced her, and that's when my husband also yelled at his mother, saying,
"You did this all to yourself. It's none of my business. Don't ever call me or my wife ever again."
But then, this time, my mother-in-law became desperate, and as an alternative suggestion, she started to make it seem like she would make an exception and let that kid live with them. This only made my husband even more angry.
"What do you mean, that kid? Sarah is our precious daughter. We don't need your permission or anything to live with our daughter in our home."
And then he hung up the phone on her. After that, we both immediately blocked her phone number so that we would never have to speak to her ever again. There's no way that we would be able to look after my sister-in-law's family situation, so we had to let them deal with it themselves. But then we received some information from our relatives about it later. Of course, there was no way that my mother-in-law, who was already quite old, would be able to raise 2 young children by herself, and no matter how many times she desperately tried to get a hold of her daughters, she wasn't able to find her, and so she ended up going to Child Protective Services and asked them to find her daughter, the mother of her children. From there, the information went to the police, and they launched an investigation on my sister-in-law, who left her younger children and ran away. The police were able to locate her, but when her new husband found out about the whole situation, the marriage collapsed. Child Protective Services also launched an investigation, and I heard that my sister-in-law was about to be charged for crimes. In the end, she was pardoned for those crimes, but she became furious that her remarriage with her boyfriend was destroyed because of all this, and she blamed her mother for it. She tried to collect a settlement fee from her mother, but her mom was going to sue her for leaving the children with her, and it seemed like the entire situation was a disaster. On top of that, everybody in the neighborhood found out about what happened, and my sister-in-law was given a reputation of being a terrible mother who left her children, and my mother-in-law a monster that tried to send her grandchildren to childcare center. The relatives told us that everybody in the town was ignoring them and avoiding them. To be honest, as for me, after all those horrible things that they did to me, I wouldn't mind which one of them loses in court at the end of the battle. At the end of the day, I'm just happy that I was able to cut off all ties with people like that. And I'm happy with my beautiful family of Jonathan and Sarah.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.